The massive steel doors of Command Center 9 at Evergreen National Security Complex stood open to the early morning light as the day shift arrived. The imposing silhouette of the Artemis Satellite Control Station dominated the space, its array of monitors and sophisticated equipment casting blue-tinted shadows across the polished granite floor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Security personnel moved with practiced efficiency around the facility, preparing it for the day's operations. Later that morning, Lieutenant Commander Peterson handed a security badge to Officer Miller as they checked credentials at an access point. "Did you hear about the evaluation today?" he asked, adjusting his uniform. Miller sighed deeply. "Another one. Didn't we just have Homeland Security inspectors here last month?" "Different this time. Some civilian specialist from Washington. Security systems expert or something." Peterson shrugged dismissively. "Probably another desk jockey who's never seen a real security breach." The junior officers continued their work, occasionally joking about bureaucrats and government consultants who couldn't tell a firewall from a fire alarm. Their laughter echoed through the cavernous command center until the main entrance opened, allowing a shaft of bright sunlight to cut across the floor. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. The person who entered wasn't what anyone expected. No pressed uniform with emblems and credentials. No clipboard-wielding bureaucrat in a business suit. Instead, a woman in her mid-40s wearing simple, unmarked civilian clothes walked quietly into the facility. She carried only a tablet and a small leather case. Nothing about her commanded immediate attention. No name tag, no security clearance badge prominently displayed. Nothing but the steady, measured pace of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. "That's her," whispered Miller to Peterson. "Doesn't look like much." Peterson shrugged. "Probably never even handled a real security breach." The woman, Eliza Blackwood according to the visitor badge, clipped to her jacket pocket, moved methodically through the command center, occasionally stopping to make notes on her tablet. She seemed to take no notice of the sideways glances and whispered comments, her focus entirely on the systems and protocols around her. When she approached the quantum encryption module that Miller was maintaining, she paused, watching silently. "Something I can help you with, ma'am?" Miller asked, not bothering to hide his annoyance at being observed. "Just documenting," Eliza replied, her voice quiet but assured. Miller resumed his work, deliberately turning his back to her. Standard encryption protocol alignment. Nothing exciting. Eliza said nothing, but after observing for another moment, she reached past him and made a small adjustment to the calibration sequence. The digital readout immediately stabilized, showing perfect alignment. Miller blinked in surprise. "How did you—" "Experience," she said simply, already moving on to the next station. Captain Reynolds, who had been watching the exchange, approached Miller after Eliza moved away. "Careful with that one," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" Reynolds shrugged. "Something's off about her. Civilian consultants don't usually know their way around quantum encryption protocols like that. Especially not the advanced calibration sequence. That's specialized knowledge." Miller glanced over at Eliza, now examining a security panel on the opposite side of the command center. "Maybe she just got lucky." "Maybe," Reynolds replied, but he didn't sound convinced. As the morning progressed, Eliza continued her methodical inspection of the facility and systems. She moved with an economy of motion that suggested familiarity with high-security environments, though she wore no insignia to indicate any service background. The officers gradually returned to their work, though many kept casting curious glances in her direction. During lunch break, the security chief pulled up her credentials on the secure terminal. The screen displayed only minimal information. Systems security consultant, civilian contractor. That was it. "That's it?" Peterson asked, peering over the chief's shoulder. "No background? No qualifications?" The chief shook his head. "Nothing else accessible at my clearance level." "Weird," muttered Miller. "Think she's some kind of corporate spy? Northrop trying to steal secrets on a billion-dollar security system?" The chief chuckled. "Doubt it." Peterson pulled out his tablet. "Let me try something." He typed Eliza's name into a search engine, scrolling through the results. Nothing. Not even a LinkedIn profile. Who doesn't have a digital footprint these days? Someone who doesn't want to be found, the chief said thoughtfully. Across the command center, Eliza continued her inspection, seemingly oblivious to the discussion about her identity. She moved to the central control station of the Artemis system and gazed at the displays, her fingers hovering over the controls without touching them. For just a moment, something flickered across her face, a look of recognition, perhaps even longing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The afternoon brought new challenges. As Eliza observed the communication systems check, she quietly suggested bypassing a secondary router when an error appeared. The system immediately responded, booting up normally. "How did you know that would work?" Miller asked, studying her face carefully. "Common issue with the quantum series systems," she replied. "The bypass trick isn't in the manual, but most field technicians know about it." "But you're not a field technician," Miller said suspiciously. Eliza held his gaze for a moment. "No," she said simply, then moved away to continue her inspection. Later, when an emergency drill was announced, the staff scrambled to their assigned positions. To everyone's surprise, Eliza moved without hesitation to exactly the right position for the drill scenario, her movements automatic and practiced. Director Marshall noticed this and watched her with growing curiosity. Something about her seemed familiar. The way she moved around sensitive equipment, her instinctive understanding of procedures. After the drill, he discreetly accessed a secure terminal and began searching through archived personnel files. What he found made him freeze in place. On the screen was a grainy image from 15 years earlier, a younger Eliza Blackwood in full intelligence officer uniform standing before the first-generation Artemis system. The file was stamped Classified Operation Midnight Sun with a note, Personnel Records sealed by order of National Security Council. Marshall stared at the screen, then back across the command center where Eliza continued her quiet inspection. Who was this woman really? And why was she back at Evergreen pretending to be a systems consultant? As the afternoon wore on, tensions in the command center subtly increased. Word had spread among the senior staff that something wasn't adding up about their visitor. The junior officers picked up on the change in atmosphere, their jokes and casual banter gradually falling silent as they focused on their work. Eliza seemed to sense the shift as well. Her movements became more guarded, her note-taking more deliberate. She kept her distance from the groups of whispering personnel, focusing entirely on her inspection tasks. The day was ending, but everyone could feel it. Something was building. The woman they dismissed as just another contractor was hiding something significant. And in a place like Evergreen, secrets had a way of coming to light when least expected. As Eliza packed up her tablet and prepared to leave, she paused near the Artemis control station, her hand resting briefly on the console. In that moment, she looked less like a civilian consultant and more like someone who had once called this magnificent system her own. The truth was closer to the surface than anyone realized, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The next morning arrived with an unusual tension hanging over Command Center 9. Eliza returned precisely at 08:00, once again in her unmarked civilian clothes, carrying the same tablet and leather case. But today felt different. The easy dismissal from the previous day had been replaced by wary curiosity from the security staff. Lieutenant Commander Peterson was the first to notice the change in dynamics. As Eliza approached his workstation, he found himself straightening unconsciously, his casual demeanor from yesterday nowhere to be found. "Morning, ma'am," he said, his tone notably more respectful than before. Eliza nodded acknowledgement. "Commander, how's the quantum entanglement holding on the secondary backup system?" Peterson blinked. Yesterday, she'd been asking general questions about documentation. Today, she was asking about specific technical details that weren't in any routine inspection checklist. "Stability's maintained at 99.7% efficiency," he replied automatically, then caught himself. "Ma'am, that information isn't typically part of a systems audit, isn't it?" Eliza made a note on her tablet. "I find quantum stability often indicates overall system integrity." Across the command center, Officer Miller was having his own unsettling encounter. Eliza had stopped beside him as he worked on the facility's communications array. But instead of simply observing, she'd begun pointing out potential improvement points that weren't in any standard manual. "The tertiary relay tends to degrade in this configuration," she mentioned casually. "You might consider rerouting the quantum signature through the auxiliary channel." Miller paused his work, security card halfway to a scanner. "Ma'am, respectfully, that modification isn't authorized without director approval." "Of course not," Eliza agreed. "I'm just noting potential efficiency improvements." But her suggestions were too specific, too knowledgeable. Miller exchanged glances with nearby officers, all of whom were beginning to realize their civilian contractor knew far more about the Artemis system than any outside consultant should. Director Marshall had spent the night researching what little he could find about Operation Midnight Sun. The details were still classified, but he managed to piece together fragments. A national security crisis 15 years ago. Impossible odds. A single intelligence officer who had somehow prevented a catastrophe that would have crippled America's defense systems. The officer's identity had been scrubbed from official records afterward. He approached Eliza during her mid-morning inspection of the neural network systems. "Ms. Blackwood," he said carefully, "I noticed you seem particularly familiar with the Artemis system's operational parameters." Eliza didn't look up from her tablet. "I've studied the technical specifications extensively." "Have you?" Marshall moved closer, lowering his voice. "Because the way you move around this facility, the questions you're asking, it's not like someone who learned from manuals." For the first time since arriving, Eliza's composure flickered. She met Marshall's eyes directly, and he saw something there. Not fear, but a careful assessment. "I take my work seriously, Director," she said finally. "I'm sure you do." Marshall nodded slowly. "It's just that in my 25 years working with these systems, I've only seen that level of intuitive understanding from people who've actually built them." The words hung in the air between them. Eliza resumed her work without responding, but Marshall noticed her movements had become more deliberate, more guarded. Meanwhile, Captain Reynolds had been conducting his own investigation. During lunch, he'd called a contact at the Pentagon, someone who owed him a favor from their training days. "I need you to run a name for me," Reynolds had said quietly into his phone. "Eliza Blackwood. Supposed to be a civilian systems consultant, but something doesn't add up." The response had been immediate and troubling. "Reynolds, don't ask questions about that name, and if you're smart, you'll forget you heard it." When Reynolds returned to the command center, he found Eliza examining the biometric security systems, an area that definitely wasn't part of any routine audit. "Interesting area to inspect," he commented, approaching slowly. Eliza didn't seem surprised by his presence. "Security systems are crucial components." "They are," Reynolds agreed. "But civilian contractors typically don't have clearance to examine biometric protocols. Those systems are classified." Eliza's fingers paused over her tablet. "I have the appropriate clearances." "Do you?" Reynolds pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. "Because when I tried to verify your background, I got told to stop asking questions. In my experience, that usually means one of two things. Either you're someone very important, or you're someone who's supposed to be invisible." The afternoon brought an unexpected complication. General Franklin, the facility commander, arrived for an unscheduled inspection, accompanied by two officers Reynolds didn't recognize. Their presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the command center. "Where's our systems consultant?" Franklin asked Director Marshall. "Over by the quantum array, sir," Marshall replied, gesturing toward Eliza. Franklin studied Eliza from across the command center, his expression unreadable. "How long has she been here?" "This is her second day, sir. Yesterday she seemed like a routine contractor, but today—" Marshall hesitated. "Today she's asking questions and making observations that suggest extensive operational knowledge of the Artemis system." One of the officers with Franklin, a stern-faced woman with intelligence insignia, spoke quietly. "Sir, we should speak with her directly." As the group approached, Eliza seemed to sense their presence. She looked up from her tablet, and for just a moment her professional mask slipped. The expression that crossed her face was one of recognition, followed immediately by resignation. "Ms. Blackwood," General Franklin called out. "Could we have a word?" Eliza straightened, suddenly looking less like a contractor and more like intelligence personnel. "Of course, General." The entire command center seemed to hold its breath as the group moved to a more private area near the conference room. Through the glass walls, the staff could see an intense conversation taking place, but couldn't make out the words. Miller moved closer to Peterson. "Think she's in trouble?" "I think," Peterson said slowly, "we're about to find out who she really is." Inside the conference room, General Franklin was studying a classified file on his tablet. "Commander Eliza Blackwood," he read aloud. "Formerly one of our most decorated intelligence officers, officially deceased as of 15 years ago." Eliza stood at attention, her civilian facade completely dropped. "Sir." "The question is," Franklin continued, "what is a dead intelligence officer doing conducting systems audits at my facility?" The intelligence officer leaned forward. "Commander, your record shows you were killed in action during Operation Midnight Sun. Your memorial service was attended by over 200 personnel." "The intelligence officer Eliza Blackwood was killed that day," Eliza replied carefully. "What remained was classified too highly to continue existing officially." Franklin nodded grimly. "And now you're back, hiding in plain sight as a contractor. The question is, why?" Through the conference room window, the security staff watched the tense meeting. Whatever was being discussed, it was clear their mysterious auditor wasn't who she'd claimed to be. Officer Miller turned to the senior staff. "Anyone want to explain what's happening?" Director Marshall, who had been quietly listening to radio chatter, suddenly straightened. "Everyone back to work," he commanded. "Now." But it was too late. The facility alarm system activated, its urgent wail filling the command center. Emergency lights began flashing as the intercom crackled to life. "Attention, all personnel. Code Crimson. Repeat. Code Crimson. All security teams, report to stations immediately." In the conference room, Eliza's head snapped up at the sound. Through the window, the staff could see her posture change completely. No longer a contractor or even a regular officer, but someone responding to a crisis with the instincts of a veteran intelligence operative. General Franklin was receiving updates through his earpiece. "We have a major cybersecurity breach at the Pentagon," he said grimly. "Someone's targeting the nuclear defense grid. They've already compromised 3 security layers." Eliza stepped forward. "Sir, request permission to. You're officially dead, Commander," the intelligence officer interrupted. "You can't handle a classified national security crisis." Eliza's jaw tightened. "The people potentially in harm's way don't care about my official status, ma'am." Outside, the security staff was mobilizing for emergency protocols, but they could see the heated discussion continuing in the conference room. Their mysterious auditor, who was apparently an intelligence officer, was clearly volunteering for something dangerous. Captain Reynolds turned to his team. "I don't know who she really is," he said quietly, "but I'm starting to think we're about to find out why they call her the Phantom." The emergency was escalating, and everyone could sense that the carefully maintained fiction of Eliza Blackwood's identity was about to be shattered completely. The heated discussion in the conference room continued as emergency protocols activated throughout the facility. Through the glass, the staff could see Eliza's posture becoming increasingly tense as General Franklin spoke rapidly into his earpiece. The intelligence officer kept shaking her head, clearly opposing whatever Eliza was proposing. Outside, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Lieutenant Commander Peterson was monitoring communications when the desperate voice of the Pentagon's cybersecurity chief crackled through. Any station, this is Fortress Actual. We are experiencing a sophisticated attack on nuclear command systems. Multiple firewalls breached. Request immediate expert assistance or we will lose control of critical defense infrastructure within 60 minutes. The words sent a chill through the command center. America's nuclear defense systems were under attack, and conventional cybersecurity teams were failing to stop it. Only someone with intimate knowledge of the Artemis system's architecture could possibly counteract this level of threat, but their qualified experts were scattered across different facilities. Captain Reynolds approached the conference room door, hoping to catch some of the conversation inside. What he heard made his blood run cold. I don't care what the regulations say, Eliza's voice carried through the glass. The entire defense grid is going to collapse if someone doesn't act. Commander, you don't exist, the intelligence officer replied firmly. If this intervention fails, if you're captured in the system, if anything goes wrong, it creates a national security nightmare. A dead intelligence officer handling an unauthorized intervention would be completely deniable, Eliza finished. No official connection to the agency, no political complications. That's exactly why this works. General Franklin's voice was strained. The risk to you personally is irrelevant, sir. This is American security. Suddenly, the conference room door opened, and all three officers emerged. The entire command center fell silent as they approached the main Artemis terminal. Eliza walked directly to Director Marshall. Director, what's the status of the quantum defensive matrix? Marshall glanced uncertainly at General Franklin, who gave a slight nod. Fully operational, ma'am. Ready for immediate deployment. Eliza nodded, then turned to address the assembled staff. I need this system prepped for emergency countermeasures. Full defensive configuration. Officer Miller stepped forward, confusion evident on his face. Ma'am, respectfully, you're a civilian contractor. You can't authorize. No, Eliza interrupted, her voice carrying new authority. I'm not. She reached into her leather case and withdrew a faded identification card. The Midnight Sun insignia awarded only to participants of the most classified operation in recent history. The few senior staff who recognized it immediately came to attention. 15 years ago, Commander Eliza Blackwood died during Operation Midnight Sun, she continued, her voice steady. What remained was too classified to officially exist, but today, America needs someone who can navigate this system like no one else. The intelligence officer stepped forward. This is completely unauthorized. Then it's on me, Eliza replied firmly. No official sanction, no orders from command, just a civilian contractor who happened to know how to counter a cyber attack. General Franklin weighed the options. His career would be over if this went badly, but America's defense infrastructure would be compromised if nothing was done. Director Marshall, he called out. How long to prep for emergency countermeasures? 15 minutes, sir. Franklin nodded grimly. Do it. The command center exploded into activity. The same officers who had dismissed Eliza 2 days ago now worked with desperate efficiency to prepare the Artemis system for cyber battle. But the tension was palpable. Everyone understood they were participating in something that officially wasn't happening. Eliza began accessing the system, accepting security clearances from staff members who now looked at her with a mixture of awe and concern. Miller approached hesitantly. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. Yesterday when you walked in, I thought... You thought exactly what you were supposed to think, Eliza replied, navigating through security protocols. That was the point. But who are you really? Eliza paused in her preparations. Someone who made choices that required her to disappear. But today, that doesn't matter. What matters is stopping this attack. As final systems checks were completed, Director Marshall pulled General Franklin aside. Sir, I've been thinking about this. If Commander Blackwood was officially killed 15 years ago, what's she been doing since then? Franklin's expression was grim. According to what little I can access, she's been conducting systems audits at various national security installations. Always under different contractor identities, always moving on after a few days. She's been keeping watch, Marshall realized. Making sure our systems are secure. That's my guess, and now we know why. The communication system crackled with another desperate transmission from the Pentagon. Any station with Artemis capability. This is Fortress Actual. Attack has breached quantum firewall. Critical systems compromised. If anyone is coming, we need them now. Eliza finished her final system check and turned to face the assembled staff. For a moment, the careful mask she'd worn for 2 days was completely gone. Standing before them was a battle-hardened intelligence officer, scarred by whatever had happened during Midnight Sun, but ready to risk everything again. Director Marshall, she called out. System status? Ready for immediate deployment, Commander. Eliza nodded, then surprised everyone by extending her hand to each staff member. Thank you, all of you. Miller shook her hand, still struggling with the transformation he'd witnessed. Commander, what happened 15 years ago during Midnight Sun? Eliza's expression darkened. We prevented a catastrophe, but the cost. She shook her head. Some missions require sacrifices that can't be officially acknowledged. She sat down at the main terminal, her fingers poised over the keyboard. If I don't make it back, make sure the Pentagon knows someone tried. You'll make it back, Captain Reynolds called out. That's what Phantoms do. They complete the mission and vanish. Eliza offered a slight smile. We'll see. The terminal activated with a soft hum. Inside the system, Eliza began the counterattack sequence with practiced precision. The massive quantum processors spooled up, their deep electronic hum filling the command center. Pentagon Cyber Command, this is Artemis Actual. Eliza's voice came through the communication system requesting direct connection to the compromised systems. Artemis Actual, you are cleared for emergency intervention. Quantum channel open. God help us all. As Eliza's fingers flew across the keyboard, executing complex countermeasures that few people on Earth could comprehend, General Franklin turned to his intelligence officer. This conversation never happened. This intervention never occurred. Is that understood? Sir, if this goes wrong, America doesn't lose control of its defense systems tonight. That's what matters. On the main display, the digital battle unfolded in abstract visualizations as Eliza navigated the complex architecture of America's most sensitive systems, hunting the intruders with a combination of technical brilliance and intuitive understanding that bordered on artistry. In the command center, the staff stood in respectful silence, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Marshall spoke quietly to the group. Whatever happens next, remember this. Commander Blackwood died 15 years ago. Today, a civilian contractor helped troubleshoot some systems. That's the story. Miller nodded slowly, finally understanding. She's been protecting us all along, hasn't she? Moving from facility to facility, making sure we're ready for moments like this. That's my guess, Reynolds replied. The Phantom watching over the system. Communications would be minimal during the intervention, but everyone in Command Center 9 would be listening. Somewhere in the digital battle space, their mysterious auditor was about to prove exactly who she really was. The waiting began. The command center at Evergreen had been transformed into a nerve center of controlled tension. Multiple screens displayed network activity, security breaches, and communication channels, all focused on an intervention that officially didn't exist. General Franklin stood behind the communications officer, his jaw tight as he monitored Eliza's progress. Current status? He asked quietly. Commander Blackwood is maintaining radio silence as planned, sir. Last digital signature shows her deep in the Pentagon's compromised systems, tracking the intruders. In Command Center 9, the security staff had gathered around a monitoring station, watching the abstract visualization of the digital battle unfolding. The Pentagon situation was deteriorating rapidly. Their last transmission had been particularly desperate. Any station. Intruders have reached Level 5 security protocols. Nuclear command authentication systems compromised. If countermeasures don't arrive in the next 30 minutes, we're looking at complete system failure. Director Marshall adjusted the communication frequency, hoping to catch any word from Eliza. Intelligence operatives usually maintain communications blackout during digital penetration, he explained to the younger officers. Too much risk of detection. Officer Miller, who had spent the day grappling with his complete misjudgment of Eliza, spoke up. Director, what really happened during Operation Midnight Sun? Why was her record erased? Marshall glanced around at the assembled staff, then made a decision. What I'm about to tell you stays in this room. Understood? Everyone nodded. 15 years ago, there was a coordinated attack on our national intelligence infrastructure. Multiple agencies compromised simultaneously in a way that was thought impossible. Foreign actors were minutes away from accessing our most sensitive files. Agents' identities, operations details, nuclear protocols. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Commander Blackwood volunteered for a solo intervention. One intelligence officer working against multiple hostile teams. navigating systems that were designed to be impenetrable from the inside out. Lieutenant Commander Peterson leaned forward. She stopped them? More than that, Marshall's voice dropped. She didn't just stop the attack. She rewrote the defensive playbook, created countermeasures that nobody had thought possible. But, in the process, she had to make choices that weren't authorized. Security protocols were breached that weren't on the approved list. Meaning? Meaning she saved every critical system, but the political fallout would have been catastrophic if it came to light. So the brass made her disappear. Officially killed in action. Full honors. Sealed records. Captain Reynolds nodded grimly. And unofficially? Unofficially, they gave her a new identity and turned her loose to do what she does best. Keep our systems and personnel ready for the impossible scenarios. The communication system crackled with static. Then Eliza's voice came through, calm and professional. Command, this is Artemis Actual. Beginning countermeasure deployment. Pentagon frequency secure, please confirm status. The response was immediate and tense. Artemis Actual, this is Fortress Command. We've got hostile code less than 2 encryption layers from nuclear authorization protocols. Whatever you're planning, we need it now. Roger, Fortress Command. I have digital signature on your compromised systems. Deploying quantum firewall. Stand by. In the command center, General Franklin gripped the back of a chair. This was the moment of truth. Either Eliza would pull off another miracle, or they would lose control of America's most critical defense systems. Meanwhile, in the digital battlefield, Eliza was threading her consciousness through a complex maze of security protocols at speeds that would have been considered impossible for most operators. The quantum interface was screaming warnings, but she trusted her instincts more than the computer. The battlefield appeared before her through the neural visualization systems. She could see the Pentagon's compromised systems marked by red incursions and the approaching hostile code glowing like toxic tendrils against the blue-green background of secure systems. Fortress Command. I have visual on hostile penetration. Marking attack vectors now. The Artemis system's sophisticated countermeasures locked onto each intrusion point in sequence. Eliza's fingers moved over the controls with practiced precision. Fortress Command. Countermeasures active. Stand by. Eliza completed the final deployment sequence. The quantum defensive matrix engaged, releasing precisely calibrated countermeasures that streaked toward their targets. Eliza immediately shifted to secondary protocols, establishing backup firewalls to contain any remnants of the attack. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the visualization lit up with multiple flashes as each countermeasure found its mark. The hostile code was contained, isolated, and methodically destroyed. Artemis Actual, this is Fortress Command. The voice over the communication system was tight with emotion. Direct hits on all intrusion points. Hostile code neutralized. You just saved America's defense infrastructure. Just doing my job, Fortress, Eliza replied. Secure your systems. In Command Center 9, a cheer went up from the assembled staff. Miller found himself grinning, despite the tension of the situation. But the mission wasn't over. Eliza still had to extract herself from the Pentagon's systems without leaving a trace, and counterintelligence measures would be fully activated now. Command, this is Artemis Actual. Eliza's voice came through the system, tension creeping in for the first time. I've been identified by automated security protocols. Taking evasive action. The celebration in the command center died instantly. Everyone knew that being identified meant Eliza could be trapped or tracked back to Evergreen. General Franklin pressed his earpiece. Artemis Actual. We have no assets available to assist. You're on your own. Understood, Command. Going dark. The communication system went silent. For the next hour, there would be no way to know if Eliza had escaped or been captured in the digital fortress she'd just saved. The waiting was agonizing. Director Marshall turned to his staff. That's what real intelligence officers do, he said quietly. They accept impossible missions and somehow make them possible. Think she'll make it back? Miller asked. Reynolds was studying the network traffic on a computer terminal. If anyone can, it's her. The Phantom didn't get that nickname by accident. As the hours passed, tension in both the command center and the Pentagon reached painful levels. The nuclear defense systems had been successfully secured, but there was still no word from Eliza. Then, just before dawn, the communication system crackled to life. Evergreen Control, this is Artemis Actual requesting secure shutdown. The relief was palpable. Eliza had done it again. Completed an impossible mission and made it back. Artemis Actual. You are cleared for immediate shutdown. Recovery team standing by as precaution. Negative on recovery team, Control. Operator undamaged. Standard extraction protocols. 20 minutes later, Eliza's consciousness returned fully to the command center. She removed the neural interface with practiced care, looking exhausted but composed. She handed her operational data to Director Marshall. System performed flawlessly, she reported. No anomalies to note. General Franklin approached with several senior officers. Outstanding work, Commander. The Pentagon owes you their systems. Eliza simply nodded. They were doing their job, sir. I was doing mine. As dawn broke fully over Evergreen, Eliza gathered her few belongings. The mission was complete, but everyone understood that her time here was ending. She couldn't stay. Too many questions would be asked. Too much attention drawn to someone who was supposed to be invisible. Miller approached her one final time. Commander, will we see you again? Eliza offered a slight smile. You'll never see me coming, officer, but when you need me most, I'll be there. She walked toward a waiting vehicle, then paused and turned back to the assembled staff. Take care of each other and take care of that system. You never know when someone might need to borrow it. With that, she climbed into the car and was driven away, disappearing once more into the anonymity that had protected her for 15 years. The staff stood in respectful silence, watching until the vehicle disappeared from sight. They had witnessed something extraordinary. The return of a legend who had never really left, just remained hidden in plain sight, ready for the moment when impossible became necessary. The Phantom had worked again, and America's most critical systems remained secure, protected from a threat the public would never know existed. 3 weeks after Eliza's dramatic intervention, Evergreen National Security Complex had settled back into its routine operations. But the story of the mysterious civilian contractor had taken on a life of its own. Despite orders to maintain secrecy, word had spread through the intelligence community. Analysts and security officers from other facilities were calling with questions, trying to verify if the legend they'd heard was true. General Franklin found himself fielding increasingly uncomfortable inquiries from Washington officials who had somehow caught wind of the unauthorized intervention. In his office, he reviewed the carefully sanitized after-action report for the dozenth time, ensuring every detail supported the official fiction. Sir, his aide knocked on the door. The Director of National Intelligence is online for you. She says it's about the systems audit incident. Franklin's stomach dropped. The DNI was not someone who called about routine matters, General Franklin. The director's voice was carefully neutral when Franklin picked up. I understand you had an interesting visitor recently. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're referring to. A civilian systems contractor who happened to be qualified to counter sophisticated cyber attacks. Come now, General. I may be patient, but I'm not naive. Franklin closed his eyes. Ma'am, I can neither confirm nor deny. Relax, General. You did the right thing. America's defense infrastructure is secure because you made a command decision, but we need to talk about the bigger picture. Meanwhile, at Command Center 9, the staff was dealing with their own complications. A team of National Security Agency investigators had arrived that morning, asking pointed questions about the contractor who had been present during the emergency. Director Marshall faced the lead investigator, Agent Donovan, across a small table in the facility office. So this Eliza Blackwood. Donovan consulted his notes. She was here for how long? 2 days, sir. Routine systems audit. And during the emergency, she just left? Marshall kept his expression neutral. Yes, sir. I assume she didn't want to interfere with national security operations. Donovan studied Marshall's face carefully. That's interesting, Director, because we have communication recordings that suggest a civilian contractor was present during emergency countermeasures. Sir, there was a lot of confusion during the crisis. People might have misspoken. The investigator wasn't buying it, but Marshall had been in intelligence long enough to know how to reveal nothing while technically telling the truth. In another part of the facility, Officer Miller was having his own encounter with the investigation team. A stern intelligence officer, Colonel Harris, had pulled him aside for questioning. Miller, we need to know exactly what this contractor said and did while she was here. Miller shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, she mostly just observed our work and took notes. She demonstrated unusual knowledge of system architecture. I guess she seemed to know her stuff. Colonel Harris leaned forward. Miller, this isn't a game. We have a secured Pentagon and a missing digital signature from that night. Someone executed those countermeasures, and we need to know who. Miller met her gaze steadily. Ma'am, I was in the command center the whole time. I saw Director Evans get taken to medical with a migraine. After that, I was focused on my duties. I didn't see anyone else qualified to execute countermeasures. It was technically true. Miller hadn't seen Eliza's official qualifications, only her actions. Colonel Harris made a note, clearly frustrated by the careful non-answer she was receiving. Across the country in a small apartment in Boulder, Eliza Blackwood was monitoring news reports about the technical difficulties at the Pentagon. The official story credited routine security protocols with preventing an, quote, attempted system intrusion. No mention of the operator, no details about the systems used. Her secure phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered successfully. Client satisfaction high. New opportunities available. Eliza deleted the message without responding. She'd been expecting this word of the Evergreen intervention had reached the right circles. Other facilities, other emergencies, other situations where someone with her unique combination of skills and official non-existence might be needed. But something felt different this time. For 15 years, she'd moved from facility to facility, conducting real audits while maintaining her cover, always staying ahead of anyone who might look too closely. The intervention at Evergreen had been necessary, but it had also been visible. Too visible. Her laptop chimed with an encrypted email. The sender was identified only as Nightwatch, but Eliza recognized the secure communication protocol. She'd been wondering when this contact would come. Phantom, your recent performance evaluation has been noted. Recommend immediate relocation to new assignment. Package includes transportation and documentation. Confirm receipt. Attached were plane tickets to Chicago and a new contractor ID, this time as Rebecca Winters, specializing in cybersecurity systems. Another facility, another identity, another chance to disappear into the background, until needed again. But as Eliza packed her few belongings, she found herself thinking about the staff at Evergreen. For the first time in 15 years, she'd allowed people to see who she really was, even if only for a moment. The respect in Miller's eyes when he'd realized his mistake, the professional camaraderie of working with Marshall and his team, the satisfaction of using her skills to save critical infrastructure rather than just maintaining systems. It had reminded her of what she'd lost when she'd accepted the phantom existence. Back at Evergreen, the investigation was wrapping up with predictably inconclusive results. The investigators had found no evidence of unauthorized personnel involvement in the intervention, no proof that anyone other than qualified security officers had access to the Artemis system, and certainly no indication that a supposedly dead intelligence officer had returned to active duty. General Franklin was summoned to a final meeting with the Director of National Intelligence, this time via secure video conference. General, I'm going to speak plainly, the director began. We both know what happened at your facility. We also both know that officially it didn't happen. The question is whether you can live with that arrangement. Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. The woman who executed that intervention, she's been operating in a gray area for 15 years. Technically, she doesn't exist. Practically, she's one of our most valuable assets. The intelligence community has been quietly monitoring her movements, and frankly, we've been impressed. Franklin blinked in surprise. Ma'am, are you saying? I'm saying that sometimes the best way to protect an asset is to let the world think it doesn't exist. Commander Blackwood made choices during Midnight Sun that saved lives but couldn't be officially sanctioned. Rather than prosecute a hero, we gave her a different kind of service. So this was all authorized? The director smiled grimly. General, if it had been authorized, there would be paperwork. If there's no paperwork, then officially nothing happened. But unofficially, America's defense systems are secure because you had the good sense to let a qualified operator do her job. The truth was more complex than anyone at Evergreen had realized. Eliza hadn't gone rogue 15 years ago. She'd been recruited into a shadow program that used her unique situation to place her exactly where she was needed most. The system's audits were real, but they were also cover for a deeper mission, maintaining readiness for the impossible scenarios that conventional security planning couldn't address. In Chicago, Rebecca Winters, formerly Eliza Blackwood, was settling into her new assignment at Lakeside Data Center. The quantum cloud systems there presented different challenges than the Artemis network, but the principle was the same. Ensure the systems were ready when heroes needed to do heroic things. Her new supervisor, Dr. Jameson, briefed her on the facility. "We've got a good team here, Ms. Winters. Professional, dedicated. They take their work seriously." "That's exactly what I like to hear, Doctor." As she toured the massive data center filled with advanced quantum processors, Eliza noticed the same dynamic she'd seen everywhere. Staff members who were competent but had never been tested in truly impossible circumstances. They were good at their jobs, but they didn't know how good they could be when everything was on the line. Her secure phone buzzed with another encrypted message. "New assignment parameters. Maintain cover. Conduct standard audits. Prepare for potential intervention in financial systems. Asset readiness critical." Eliza smiled slightly. Somewhere another group of analysts might soon find themselves in an impossible situation. And when they did, they wouldn't know that their salvation was being prepared by a woman who officially didn't exist, working with teams who didn't know they were training to save America's financial infrastructure. The Phantom was ready to work again whenever and wherever she was needed. At Evergreen, life had returned to normal, but the legend remained. New personnel would occasionally ask about the mysterious contractor who'd been there during the incident, but the answers were always the same. Just a routine systems audit, nothing unusual to report. But in quiet moments, when the command center was empty, except for the humming presence of the Artemis system, the veteran staff members would sometimes pause and remember. They'd witnessed something extraordinary, the brief return of a legend who lived in the shadows, protecting those who protected others. And they knew that somewhere out there, she was still watching, still ready, still ensuring that when the impossible became necessary, someone would be prepared to make it possible. The investigation was closed, the files were sealed, and officially, nothing had ever happened. But America's defense infrastructure was secure, and that was the only truth that really mattered. 6 months after the Evergreen incident, the shadow network that Eliza operated within was facing its own crisis. In a secure conference room buried 3 levels beneath the NSA headquarters, the Director of National Intelligence sat across from CIA Deputy Director Thomas Morgan, reviewing a troubling intelligence report. "Our Phantom asset has been compromised," Morgan said, sliding a classified folder across the table. "Foreign intelligence services are starting to connect the dots." The director opened the file, revealing surveillance photos of Eliza at various security installations over the past 15 years. The images were grainy, taken from long distances, but they clearly showed the same person at facilities where impossible interventions had subsequently been carried out. "How bad is it?" the director asked. "Bad enough. They haven't identified her yet, but they know someone is moving through our system, someone with capabilities that don't officially exist." Meanwhile, at Lakeside Data Center, Eliza was conducting what appeared to be a routine inspection of a quantum storage array, but Dr. Jameson had noticed something troubling about their contractor. She kept checking her secure phone, and her usual focused demeanor seemed strained. "Everything all right, Ms. Winters?" Jameson asked during a break. "Just fine, Doctor." "How's the quantum coherence holding on the financial data arrays?" It was a deflection, and Jameson knew it. Over 6 months of working together, he'd come to respect Rebecca Winters' expertise, but he'd also noticed that she sometimes seemed to know things that weren't in any manual. Today felt different, like she was expecting bad news. Eliza's encrypted phone buzzed with a priority message. "Night watch to Phantom. Immediate extraction recommended. Your pattern has been identified by hostile intelligence. Extraction team inbound to your location." Eliza closed her eyes briefly. After 15 years of careful movement, someone had finally put together enough pieces to see the bigger picture. The question was whether they knew who she really was, or just that she existed. She typed back, "Pattern confirmed. Request 24-hour delay for mission-critical assessment." The response was immediate. "Negative. Extraction non-negotiable. Report to designated coordinates in 2 hours." But Eliza had noticed something during her inspection that morning. Signs that Lakeside was about to become much more important than anyone realized. Equipment staging, unusual network traffic, personnel assignments that suggested a major operation was being prepared. If she disappeared now, there might not be anyone qualified to handle whatever crisis was developing. At Evergreen, Officer Miller, now promoted to lieutenant, was monitoring communications when an encrypted priority message came through. The content made him sit up straight. Intelligence indicated that foreign operatives were actively hunting for a phantom operator who had been involved in several classified interventions. Miller immediately contacted General Franklin. "Sir, you need to see this intelligence brief. It's about our contractor from 6 months ago." Franklin read the message with growing concern. "They're looking for her." "Sir, should we warn her somehow?" Franklin was quiet for a moment. "Miller, officially, we don't know who she is. We had a systems contractor named Eliza Blackwood who did routine work and left. That's all we know. But unofficially, I hope whoever is looking out for phantom operators is keeping them safe." Back at Lakeside, Eliza was facing an impossible choice. Her extraction team would arrive in 90 minutes, but abandoning her post now felt like betraying the principles that had driven her for 15 years. She'd accepted the phantom existence to serve a purpose, protecting systems and people who couldn't protect themselves. Dr. Jameson approached her workstation. "Ms. Winters, we just received orders to prep the quantum financial firewall for immediate deployment. Treasury Department priority." Eliza's blood chilled. Treasury Department priority meant high-risk financial systems. Exactly the kind of situation where having someone with her experience embedded in the support structure could mean the difference between stability and catastrophe. "Timeline?" she asked. "Full deployment in 6 hours. Global financial markets protection." Eliza made her decision. She typed an encrypted message. "Phantom to Night Watch. Cannot extract at this time. Financial systems deployment imminent. My skills are needed here." The response was immediate and angry. "Extraction is not optional. Your cover is blown. Report to extraction point immediately." "Negative," Eliza typed back. "Mission takes priority." For the first time in 15 years, Eliza Blackwood was officially disobeying orders. But she learned something important during her time in the shadows. Sometimes the greatest service required the greatest sacrifice. She turned off her encrypted phone and focused on the quantum systems being prepared around her. Global financial markets, treasury protection, critical infrastructure. If something went wrong, if the mission parameters changed, if the impossible became necessary, she would be there. Jameson noticed her sudden focus. "Something wrong, Ms. Winters?" "Just want to make sure everything is perfect, Doctor. These systems are about to protect the entire global economy." 20 minutes later, Eliza's extraction team arrived at Lakeside, posing as Department of Homeland Security officials conducting a surprise inspection. Their leader, a cold-eyed man in a civilian suit, approached Dean Jameson. "We're looking for your systems contractor, Rebecca Winters. We need to speak with her immediately." Jameson's instincts kicked in. These men didn't feel right. Too tense, too focused, too much like hunters who'd found their prey. "I'm sorry, but Ms. Winters is conducting critical pre-deployment work. She can't be interrupted." "This isn't a request, Doctor. And this is a secure facility preparing for Treasury Department operations," Jameson replied firmly. "No one interrupts mission-critical work without proper authorization." The man in the suit pulled out credentials that looked official but felt wrong. "These are proper authorization." Jameson pretended to study the credentials while subtly activating a silent alarm that would alert facility security. Something was very wrong here. Meanwhile, Eliza had noticed the commotion near the data center entrance and recognized the signs of an extraction team that had shifted into hunting mode. They weren't here to protect her anymore. They were here to eliminate a security liability. She moved deeper into the facility, using the massive server arrays as cover while she assessed her options. The quantum financial firewall was nearly ready for deployment, but the Treasury Department hadn't arrived yet. If she could just maintain her cover for another few hours. Her commercial phone rang. The one not supposed to exist in Rebecca Winters' identity. Only one person had that number. "Miller," she answered quietly. "Commander, wherever you are, you need to know there are foreign intelligence operatives actively hunting for you. But there's also something else. We're monitoring chatter about a planned attack on global financial systems tonight, wherever they're being protected." Eliza closed her eyes. The mission she was supporting wasn't just important, it was compromised, and she was the only person in position to do anything about it. Miller, I need you to contact General Franklin immediately. Tell him the Phantom says check the deployment protocols on tonight's financial firewall. Someone on the inside is feeding information to the enemy. Commander, are you safe? Eliza looked across the data center at the extraction team that was now systematically searching for her. Define safe, Miller. She ended the call and made another impossible decision. The extraction team thought they were hunting a rogue intelligence asset. The foreign operatives were looking for a Phantom operator. But what they were all about to discover was something much more dangerous. A woman who had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this kind of betrayal. Liza Blackwood had accepted death once to serve her country. Tonight she might have to accept it again. But first, she had global financial systems to protect and a betrayal to expose. The Phantom was about to become visible one final time. The data center at Lakeside had become a battlefield of wills and hidden identities. Eliza moved between the massive quantum processors, staying ahead of the extraction team that was systematically searching for her. She disabled the facility's external communications to prevent them from calling for backup, but that also meant she was cut off from any support. Dr. Jameson was becoming increasingly suspicious of the Homeland Security officials. Their behavior, their questions, their obvious familiarity with tactical movements rather than investigative procedures, everything pointed to them being something other than what they claimed. Sir, he said to the team leader, I'm going to need you to wait in the visitor area while I contact my director. That won't be necessary, Doctor, the man replied, his hand moving subtly toward his concealed weapon. We just need to locate Ms. Winters for a routine security briefing. Jameson's security instincts kicked in fully. These weren't officials. They were operators, and they were hunting someone on his facility. Sir, I'm going to have to insist. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Treasury Department team, who would be deploying the quantum financial firewall. 12 elite analysts in formal attire entered the data center, immediately changing the dynamic of the situation. The team leader, Deputy Director Sandra Voss, approached Jameson. Doctor, we're here for the 1800 deployment. Are the systems ready? Yes, ma'am, but we have a situation developing. What kind of situation? Before Jameson could respond, Eliza emerged from behind one of the server arrays. She'd made a decision. The only way to protect the financial deployment was to expose herself completely. Deputy Director Voss, she called out, her voice carrying the authority that had been hidden beneath Rebecca Winter's civilian contractor facade. Your deployment has been compromised. There's a leak in your intelligence chain. Voss turned, studying Eliza carefully. And you are? Someone who's been watching your back for longer than you know. The extraction team leader stepped forward aggressively. Ma'am, that woman is a security risk. We need to take her into custody immediately. Voss looked between Eliza and the supposed officials, her analytical mind processing the conflicting information. Something wasn't adding up. Eliza made the choice to trust her. Deputy Director, check your deployment protocols against what happened to Operation Silver Shield 3 months ago. Same source, same security architecture, same kind of unexplained breach that shouldn't have been possible. Voss's expression sharpened. Operation Silver Shield had been a disaster, a supposedly secure financial firewall that had been penetrated within hours of deployment. Only quick action had prevented billions in losses. How do you know about Silver Shield? Voss demanded. Because I've been tracking the pattern for 5 years. Someone in your chain has been feeding information to financial terrorists. Tonight's deployment follows the same profile. The extraction team leader was reaching for his weapon when Dr. Jameson stepped between him and Eliza. Sir, I'm going to need to see some actual credentials, the kind that can be verified through official channels. It was the moment everything changed. The extraction team leader, realizing that their cover was blown and their mission was failing, made a fatal decision. He drew his weapon, pointing it at Jameson. Step aside, Doctor, now. The data center erupted into controlled chaos. The Treasury security team immediately took defensive positions, their own weapons drawn. Eliza dove behind a quantum processor bank, her mind racing through tactical options. Deputy Director Voss's voice cut through the tension. Lower your weapons immediately. Identify yourselves. We're Homeland Security conducting a classified operation, the team leader said, but his authority was evaporating rapidly. If you're Homeland Security, Voss replied coldly, then you know that threatening government personnel during critical financial operations is a federal offense. Eliza realized this was her moment. She stepped out from cover, hands visible but ready. Deputy Director Voss, my name is Eliza Blackwood. Former intelligence officer, officially deceased, currently operating under classified assignment. These men are not Homeland Security. They're here to eliminate a witness to 15 years of unauthorized operations. Voss studied her face, then spoke into her radio. Facility security to Sector 5, Priority 1. We have hostile elements on site. The extraction team leader made his final mistake. He shifted his weapon toward Eliza, and that was all the provocation Treasury security needed. In seconds, the threat was neutralized with precise efficiency. As facility security secured the scene, Eliza approached Deputy Director Voss. Ma'am, you need to abort tonight's deployment. The protocols are compromised. Based on what evidence? Eliza handed her the secure phone showing the communication log she'd been monitoring. The same digital signatures that preceded Silver Shield, Green Wall, and 2 other compromised deployments. Someone with high-level access has been selling your security architecture to financial terrorists. Voss studied the data, her expression growing darker. This intelligence came from Assistant Secretary James Harrington, Treasury Cybersecurity Division, Eliza finished. He's been feeding operational details to criminal organizations for at least 3 years. The weight of the revelations settled over the group. Harrington had been responsible for dozens of financial security operations, any of which could have been compromised. Why should we trust you? Voss asked. Eliza looked around the data center at the faces watching her. Dr. Jameson, who'd protected her despite not knowing who she really was. The Treasury analysts who'd risked themselves to defend strangers. The support staff who'd just witnessed their carefully ordered world turned upside down. Because 15 years ago, I made a choice to disappear rather than let political convenience override what was right. Tonight, I'm making the choice to reappear for the same reason. Deputy Director Voss made a command decision. Dr. Jameson, I need secure communications to Treasury operations, Priority Alpha. We're scrubbing tonight's deployment and initiating an internal investigation. As the immediate crisis was handled, Eliza found herself in the unusual position of being officially visible again. The phantom existence was over. Too many people knew. Too much had been exposed. General Franklin arrived at Lakeside within 4 hours, having flown directly from Evergreen when he'd received word about the incident. Commander Blackwood, he said when they finally spoke privately, it's time to come in from the cold. Eliza nodded slowly. What about the program, the shadow operations? There will always be a need for people who can do the impossible. But maybe it's time to do it officially again. And the consequences? Midnight Sun, the unauthorized actions? Franklin smiled. Commander, you just prevented a global financial catastrophe and exposed a traitor at the highest levels of government. I think Washington is prepared to officially forget about ancient history in exchange for current heroism. As dawn broke over Lakeside Data Center, Eliza Blackwood stood in full intelligence officer uniform for the first time in 15 years. The phantom insignia was back on her lapel, but this time it was accompanied by official credentials and a new assignment: Special Intelligence Operations, with a mandate to prevent exactly the kind of betrayals she'd been tracking. Dr. Jameson approached as she prepared to leave. Commander, will we see you again? Eliza smiled. Doctor, this time when I show up, you'll know exactly who I am. The financial deployment was successfully rescheduled with clean protocols. James Harrington was arrested for treason, and billions in global assets that would have been stolen instead remained secure. But more importantly, Eliza Blackwood was no longer a phantom. She was back where she belonged, serving officially, protecting systems that protected others, and proving that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who choose to disappear so others can live in security. The Phantom had finally come home. 1 year later, Command Center 9 at Evergreen National Security Complex was bustling with activity as dignitaries, intelligence personnel, and security officials gathered for an unprecedented ceremony. The event had been classified until the morning it occurred, but now the story of the Phantom was finally being told officially. Lieutenant Miller, now the senior security officer on duty, supervised the final preparations with quiet pride. The Artemis system gleamed under the command center lights, its quantum processors meticulously maintained by a team that had never forgotten the night their mysterious contractor had saved America's defense infrastructure. General Franklin stood at the podium reviewing his remarks one final time. After a year of classified hearings, congressional briefings, and intelligence reviews, the decision had been made to reveal the truth about the Shadow Operations program and about the operator who had made it work. "Nervous, sir?" Miller asked as he approached. Franklin smiled. "A little. It's not every day you get to officially resurrect someone from the dead." At the back of the command center, Dr. Jameson from Lakeside had arrived with several members of his team. They'd requested permission to attend, having become part of the story themselves. "Think she'll actually show up?" Jameson asked Director Marshall. "She'll be here," Marshall replied confidently. "The Phantom has never missed a mission." As if summoned by his words, a familiar figure appeared in the command center doorway, but this time, Eliza Blackwood wasn't wearing an unmarked civilian outfit or contractor credentials. She walked in wearing the full dress uniform of an intelligence commander with commendation ribbons that told a story of exceptional service and a newly minted set of credentials that reflected her official return to active duty. The assembled crowd fell silent as she made her way toward the front of the command center. For many of the younger personnel present, this was their first glimpse of the legendary operator they'd heard whispered about in security briefings and intelligence assessments across the community. The Director of National Intelligence, who had flown in personally for the ceremony, stepped forward to greet her. "Commander Blackwood," she said formally, then smiled. "It's good to have you back officially." "Thank you, ma'am. It's good to be back." General Franklin called the ceremony to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor not just an exceptional intelligence officer, but a model of what it means to serve with honor, even when that service cannot be recognized." He paused, looking directly at Eliza. 15 years ago, Commander Eliza Blackwood was officially killed in action during a classified operation. Today, we're here to correct the record and to recognize not just her survival, but her continued service to this nation in ways that few could imagine and fewer still could accomplish. The formal citation was read, detailing Eliza's official achievements. Her exceptional performance during Operation Midnight Sun, her successful deep cover operations maintaining system integrity across multiple facilities, her prevention of the Lakeside betrayal, and her instrumental role in exposing the intelligence leak that had cost America billions. But for Eliza, the most meaningful moment came when General Franklin called forward the security team from Command Center 9. "Commander Blackwood," he said. "These men and women worked beside you when you were officially just a contractor. They've requested the honor of presenting you with something." Director Marshall stepped forward carrying a carefully preserved security badge. Not just any badge, but the visitor credential that had identified her simply as Eliza Blackwood, Systems Consultant, on the night of the Pentagon intervention. "Ma'am," Marshall said formally, "from all of us who've had the honor of serving with the Phantom." As Eliza accepted the badge, Miller spoke up from the assembled team. "Ma'am, we just want you to know we never doubted you were exactly who you needed to be, when you needed to be it." The emotion in the command center was palpable. This wasn't just an intelligence ceremony, it was a family reunion. The Director of National Intelligence took the podium for the final remarks. "Commander Blackwood will be assuming command of the newly formed Special Intelligence Operations Division. Her mission will be to ensure that when our systems face the impossible, someone is prepared to make it possible." After the formal ceremony, Eliza found herself surrounded by well-wishers and colleagues, but she noticed someone standing quietly by the Artemis terminal. A young analyst she didn't recognize. She approached him. "Analyst." She read from his ID badge. "Thompson." "Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say thank you. My sister works at the Treasury Department. Because of what you did at Lakeside, her team's financial protocols weren't compromised. She doesn't know it was you, but I do." Eliza felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment, the choices, the sacrifices, the years of invisible service. "Your sister protected herself, analyst. I just provided information." As the crowd began to disperse, Eliza walked over to the Artemis terminal, running her hand along its familiar surface. Miller joined her. Strange to be back officially? He asked. In some ways, Eliza replied. But you know what? The mission hasn't changed. Protect the systems, protect each other, and be ready when the impossible becomes necessary. And now? Miller asked. Eliza smiled, looking around the command center at the faces of people who had become more than colleagues. They'd become proof that service and sacrifice were recognized, even when they couldn't be acknowledged. Now I get to do it all officially, with backup, with support, and with the best intelligence teams in the community. Dr. Jameson approached with a tablet. Ma'am, your first assignment just came through. There's a situation developing overseas that might require someone with your particular skills. Eliza looked at the mission parameters, then at the assembled team that would support her. For 15 years, she'd worked alone, invisible, and officially non-existent. Now she had something she'd almost forgotten she missed, a team. Well then, she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made her a legend. Let's get to work. As the command center lights dimmed and the crowd departed, the Artemis system stood ready once again. But this time, when the impossible became necessary, the Phantom wouldn't have to work alone. Eliza Blackwood was officially back, and the intelligence world would never be the same. The story that had begun with laughter and dismissal had ended with recognition and respect. Sometimes heroes hide in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the world needs them most. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to witness the moment when they step back into the light. 2 years later, Eliza stood before a new group of intelligence officers at the Special Operations Training Facility. These weren't ordinary analysts. They were the most promising minds in the intelligence community, selected for a program that, until recently, didn't officially exist. Welcome to Phantom Division, she began, her voice carrying through the secure lecture hall. You're here because each of you has demonstrated the potential to do what others consider impossible. She paced along the front of the room, studying the eager faces before her. They were young, brilliant, and committed, much as she had been 2 decades earlier. The threats we face don't fit into neat categories. They don't respect boundaries between cyber and physical. They don't wait for committee approvals or follow established protocols. Eliza activated the main display, showing a complex network of interconnected systems, the global infrastructure that most citizens never saw but depended on every day. For 15 years, I operated alone because the system wasn't ready for the reality we faced. Today, we're building something better. A network of exceptional people who can step into the impossible when necessary, with full official support and recognition. A young analyst raised her hand. Commander, the briefing mentioned Operation Midnight Sun as the origin of the Phantom Division concept. Can you tell us what really happened? Eliza hadn't expected the question, but perhaps it was time. The classification had been lifted just last month. 15 years ago, I was assigned to monitor routine network traffic at the National Intelligence Center. Nothing special, just watching for anomalies. But I noticed something unusual. Microscopic delays in quantum encryption protocols. Delays so small they'd been dismissed as normal variants. She brought up historical data on the main screen. These weren't random. They were deliberate. A sophisticated intrusion technique developed by a foreign intelligence service. By the time I reported it, they had already penetrated 7 layers of security and were hours away from accessing our entire intelligence network. The room was silent now, every trainee leaning forward. The standard response would have been to shut down the system, isolate the breach, and rebuild from secure backups. But there was a problem. We were in the middle of 16 critical operations worldwide. Shutting down meant compromising those operations and potentially losing dozens of field agents. Eliza paused, remembering that impossible moment of decision. I proposed a different approach, using the quantum architecture itself to create a mirrored environment. A digital hall of mirrors that would trap the intruders while allowing our operations to continue. It had never been attempted. The risks were enormous. What happened? Another trainee asked. I was denied authorization. The leadership couldn't approve an untested technique with so much at stake. So I made a choice. I executed the countermeasure anyway. The implications weren't lost on the trainees. Unauthorized actions at that level typically ended careers. Or worse. It worked. We contained the intrusion, protected our operations, and prevented a catastrophic intelligence breach. But there were consequences. I had violated direct orders accessed systems beyond my authorization, and created a quantum architecture that technically shouldn't have been possible. Eliza smiled slightly. The intelligence community doesn't quite know what to do with people who break the rules and turn out to be right. So they made me disappear, officially killed in action, unofficially reassigned to a non-existent program where I could continue protecting our systems without the constraints of standard protocols. One of the older trainees, a former cyber warfare specialist, leaned forward. So you became the Phantom. I became what was necessary, Eliza corrected. And for 15 years, that meant operating in the shadows, moving from facility to facility, ensuring our critical systems were ready for the threats that didn't fit into conventional scenarios. She gestured to the room around them. But that approach had limitations. One person can only do so much. What we're building now is different. A division of officially sanctioned, impossible operators who can act with the full backing of the intelligence community. A hand raised at the back of the room. Commander, with respect, if the program is now official with budgets and oversight, won't that create the same constraints that made your Phantom existence necessary in the first place? It was an astute question, exactly the kind of critical thinking she was looking for. That's the balance we're working to create, Eliza acknowledged. Official recognition with operational flexibility. The intelligence community has finally recognized that traditional approaches aren't sufficient for the threats we face. Your mission is to operate within that new paradigm, not as phantoms, but as officially recognized pioneers. As the briefing continued, Eliza felt a sense of completion she hadn't experienced in years. The journey from Operation Midnight Sun to this moment had been longer and more difficult than anyone could have imagined. But standing before these exceptional minds, she could see the legacy taking shape, not just her own, but the legacy of everyone who had protected America's critical systems while remaining in the shadows. Later that evening, she met with General Franklin, now the Director of National Intelligence, in his secure office. "How are the trainees?" he asked. "Promising, not just technically skilled, but able to think beyond conventional parameters. That's what we need." Franklin nodded. "The President has signed off on the full operational authority for Phantom Division. You'll have the resources and authorization to recruit globally. And the operational flexibility? As discussed, your teams will have pre-authorized decision-making authority for crisis scenarios. No more waiting for committees while threats evolve." Eliza allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This was what she'd been working toward. Not just her own return from the shadows, but the creation of a system that could adapt to impossible scenarios without requiring its operators to sacrifice their identities. "There's something else," Franklin added, sliding a tablet across the desk. "This came through secure channels this morning. I think you'll find it interesting." Eliza examined the intelligence report, her expression shifting from curiosity to focused intensity. A new pattern was emerging in global financial systems, microscopic anomalies in quantum transaction protocols, almost identical to what she'd observed before Midnight Sun. "It's starting again," she said quietly. "Yes, but this time, you're not facing it alone." Eliza thought of the trainees she'd just briefed, the team she'd built over the past 2 years, the network of officially sanctioned impossible operators, now positioned throughout the intelligence community. "No," she agreed. "This time, we face it together." As she left Franklin's office, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a young intelligence officer noticing anomalies that others missed, to a phantom operating in the shadows for 15 years, to the commander of a division created specifically to do the impossible. The systems she'd once protected alone were now guarded by a network of exceptional minds, all operating with the full backing of the intelligence community. The Phantom had not just come home, she had transformed the home itself, creating space for a new kind of intelligence operation that could meet the challenges of an increasingly complex world. Tomorrow, she would brief her team on the emerging threat pattern. They would deploy across global systems, hunting the digital shadows that others couldn't see. But unlike her years as the Phantom, they would do so with their real names, their official credentials, and the full support of the nation they served. The impossible had become necessary, and for the first time in 15 years, Eliza Blackwood was exactly who she needed to be, exactly where she needed to be, with exactly the team she needed beside her. The Phantom Division was ready. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.